Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Stallion by Starlight readings. Today we're going to read chapter 7. In chapter 6, a couple of different things happened. Jack and Annie went to the stables and they learned that King Philip was buying horses that fight in wars called war horses. And there was one particular war horse named Bucephalus that everyone was having a hard time taming. And they were being a little rough with, and Alexander seemed really attached to Bucephalus and really thought that he could reach him and calm him and train him. So it ended with Jack and Annie trying to figure out what they can do now. They've learned about Alexander, that he wants to be as strong and powerful as his father. He thinks he's the greatest athlete in the world. He can be a little mean, but we saw that his dad can be a little mean to him too. And they thought that they might use his love of Bucephalus to learn more about him and kind of reach him and see if they can find out about that true greatness that they're searching for. So let's get started. And today's chapter is chapter 7, and it's Stallion at Starlight. Jack stared at Annie for a moment. "So, what do you have in mind?" he said. "We could try to train Bucephalus for Alexander," said Annie. "Then maybe his dad would let him keep the horse." "Are you serious?" said Jack. "You and me train him?" "We've done it before," said Annie. "Remember when we went to the Wild West and helped save the Mustangs? We learned some rules on how to treat a horse." "That journey was a long time ago," said Jack. "But you took notes," said Annie. "I saw them in your notebook today." "Yeah, well, we might have notes, but we don't have much experience," said Jack. "We weren't there long enough." "Let's just look at your notes," said Annie. Jack pulled out his notebook and found the notes he'd taken during their adventure in the Wild West. "Horse rules," he read aloud. "Soft hand, firm voice, sunny attitude, praise, and reward." "Simple. We just have to be nice and kind and positive," said Annie. "Let's try it." She started toward the gate. "Are you crazy? There's lots more to it than that," said Jack, following her. "Those guys in the ring have tons of experience, and they couldn't do anything with that horse." "Forget those guys," said Annie. "William, we're a million times nicer to animals than they are. And I have a sunny attitude." She opened the gate and started across the long stretch of grass to the stable. "But that horse is dangerous, Annie," Jack said, as he followed her to the stable entrance. "Don't just think you can tame him." "Now you sound like King Philip," said Annie. "Let's find the horse first, then we'll figure out what to do." Jack and Annie peeked into the shadowy stable. It smelled of wood, barley, and hay. Contented sounds of snuffing, snorting, and munching came from the stalls. From the other end of the barn, though, came neighing and stamping noises. "I think he's at the far end," said Annie. She looked around. "I don't think anyone's in here now. Let's look." "Move fast," said Jack. They stepped into the dark stable. Jack grabbed a lamp from a wooden table. The flickering light cast strange shadows as he and Annie moved past the stalls toward the end of the barn. Jack held the lamp high as they passed a white horse, several brown horses, and a brown and white spotted horse. Bucephalus was in the very last stall. His coat shone in the lamplight. He was completely black except for a white star on his forehead. His eyes still had a wild look, and his ears were flattened against the sides of his head. Jack thought he looked angry. "Hi, Bucephalus," Annie said in a warm, friendly voice. "Boy, are we happy to see you, and I know you're happy to see us, too." "No, he isn't," Jack said. "This isn't going to work." But Annie lifted the latch on the door and calmly stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Don't worry, Jack. I have a way with the animals, remember?" said Annie. She jumped onto a bale of hay and put her leg over the horse's back. "No, no, you don't just climb on," said Jack. The stallion gave a loud snort, then kicked his back hooves and dropped his head down, trying to buck Annie off. "Whoa!" cried Annie, clutching the horse's mane. The horse hurled himself against the door. Jack barely got out of the way before the animal shot out of the stall. With Annie clinging to his mane, the horse ran through the long barn and out the open doorway. "Stop!" Jack shouted. He blew out the lamp and ran after the stallion and Annie. I think Annie's in for a wild ride. Outside in the riding ring, the horse reared. Annie was holding on with all her might. The stallion loomed above Jack, raking the air with his front hooves. Jack could see the whites of his eyes. Jack stumbled backward and fell. At the same time, Annie tumbled off the horse. The stallion galloped across the grassy ring. Jack scrambled over to Annie. "You okay?" he cried. "Yes," she sat up. "You were right. Being nice wasn't enough," she said, trying to catch her breath. "I made a fool of myself. I guess I don't have enough experience." The stallion stopped near the fence. He stood against the purple-blue sky of early evening, snorting loudly. "Don't feel bad," said Jack. "It would take tons of experience to train a horse like him." "Well," Annie was still struggling to breathe. We could be great horse trainers if we really wanted to." "What do you mean?" asked Jack. The magic," Annie said. "We sniff the magic mist and then make a wish to become great horse trainers." "But does this have anything to do with our mission?" Jack said. "If it doesn't, it wouldn't be practical to use our magic now." "It might not be practical," Annie said, "but I feel like it's the right thing to do." Jack looked at the stallion. The animal made a soft, blowing sound. He stared intensely back at Jack, as if trying to tell him something. "Okay," said Jack. "I guess we could give it a try. Why not?" "Great," said Annie. "This is going to be so much fun." She jumped to her feet. "Slow down," said Jack, standing up. He reached into his bag and pulled out the tiny glass bottle. The silver mist from the Isle of Avalon swirled inside. "So, here's what we do. We make a wish to be 2 great horse trainers." "Yes," said Annie. "Okay," said Jack. "I wonder what happens when you're the greatest horse trainers ever." "We'll soon find out," said Annie. Jack lifted the bottle into the air. "We wish to be 2 great horse trainers." Then he uncorked the bottle, closed his eyes, and deeply inhaled the magic mist. A mix of wonderful smells overcame him. Sweet honeysuckle with damp summer grass and leaves in sunshine. When Jack opened his eyes, he felt lightheaded. He held the bottle out to Annie, and she inhaled the mist too. "Ah," she breathed. Jack corked the tiny bottle and put it away. He and Annie grinned at each other. "All set?" Annie asked. "You bet," said Jack. He wasn't worried now. He felt as calm and relaxed as if he had tamed 1,000 wild stallions. "Hello, Buddy," Annie said to the stallion. "Do you mind if we just call you Buddy? It's much easier than Bucephalus." Jack laughed quietly. Buddy was a better name. Buddy pricked his ears as if he were listening to her. "Do you mind if we come closer, Buddy?" Annie asked. The horse didn't move. Annie started walking very slowly toward him. Jack walked with her. When they were close enough to touch him, Buddy backed up nervously. He swished his tail and arched his neck. "It's okay, Buddy," Jack said in a soft voice. "It's okay, it's okay." Jack concentrated on the stallion. He poured all his energy, all his compassion, and all his strength into the horse, until he felt that he and Buddy were one and the same creature. "Do not come close." "What?" Jack said, looking around. Was he hearing the horse's thoughts? "You don't want us to come close to you, Buddy?" Annie asked. Oh man, thought Jack, Annie heard him too. This must be what happens when you're a really great horse trainer. You understand what horses are thinking. Jack looked deeply into the stallion's eyes. He tried to hear the horse's thoughts again. "Do not come closer." "Okay, we won't," said Jack, keeping his voice calm and soothing. "We won't come closer until you're ready." "That's right," said Annie, "but tell us, why can't we come closer?" "No riders." "Why no riders?" Jack asked the horse. "You once had riders, didn't you?" "We won't hurt you, Buddy," said Annie. "We promise." Buddy lowered his head. "Lost." "You're lost," said Annie. "Lost." Jack remembered what Aristotle had told them. "He used to belong to the royal horse master of Thessaly," he said to Annie. He looked into the horse's eyes again. "Is it your master?" he asked the stallion. "Is your master lost?" The horse threw back his head and sniffed the air. Jack and Annie were quiet for a moment. Then Annie said softly, "I'm afraid your master is not coming back. Not ever." The horse was still. "Do you miss him?" Annie asked. The stallion tossed his head. Jack thought he heard a word. Sad. The stallion's sadness washed over Jack, filling him with sorrow too. "I'm sorry," he said. "We're really sorry," said Annie. She sounded like she might cry. Jack took another step toward the horse. Annie stepped with him. This time, the stallion didn't back away. Annie breathed on the horse's muzzle so he could smell her breath. Jack did the same. Then Annie touched the stallion's forehead, and Jack touched him too. Annie moved her hand down the horse's nose while Jack stroked the horse's long neck. The animal's velvety coat smelled of grass and wind. "Just know this," Jack said to the stallion. He spoke so tenderly and with all his heart. "Whatever happened to your master was not your fault. Not at all." The stallion lowered his head and nuzzled Jack and Annie. His whole body shuddered, as if he were sighing with relief. Wow, that was a very powerful chapter. And we learned a lot about Bucephalus too. Bucephalus didn't want any riders and didn't want anyone near him because he was really upset that his master was lost. And when he found out his master's not coming back, he was very, very sad. But Jack and Annie were able to use the magic mist and were able to calm him down. So I wonder what that's going to mean for Alexander in our next chapter. Our next chapter is chapter 8, Night Riders. I can't wait. Tune in tomorrow for chapter 8. Bye.